Welcome to One World Radio Station, promoting the oneness of God, oneness of religion, and oneness of humanity.
O Son of Man, for everything there is a sign, the sign of love is fortitude under my decree, and patience under my trials. O Son of Man, the true lover yearneth for tribulation, even as doth the rebel for forgiveness, and the sinful for mercy. Son of Man, the temple of being is my throne. Cleanse it of all things, that there I may be established, and there I may abide. O Son of Being, thy heart is my home, sanctify it for my descent. Thy Spirit is my place of revelation. Cleanse it for my manifestation, for my manifestation, for my manifestation.
You are listening to OWRS.
Just as all of the world's major religions have dawned in the East, the Baha'i faith had its roots in Iran, which once was known as Persia. It was the middle of the 19th century. An air of religious fervor permeated Christian, Jewish, and Islamic countries around the world. Predictions by Bible scholars sparked a new wave of evangelism and the birth of Adventist denominations. Thousands flocked to the Middle East to await the appearance of the Messiah. Meanwhile, in Shiraz, Iran, a young merchant quietly proclaimed that he was the bearer of a revelation from God, referring to himself as the Bab, meaning the gate. He explained that he was the forerunner of a divine teacher greater than himself, who would soon appear and bring about a new age of unity and peace. The Bab's spiritual and moral teaching spread rapidly throughout Persian society. He promoted the upliftment of women and the poor, and encouraged universal education and the study of science, themes considered radical in a society still steeped in centuries-old traditions. Perceiving the progressive new faith as a threat, religious and civil authorities imprisoned and killed thousands of the Bab's followers. In 1850, the Bab himself was executed by firing squad in this public square in Tabriz, and his remains were hidden away by his followers. In 1852, in Tehran, one of the most courageous supporters of the Bab, a nobleman named Mirza Hussein Ali, was arrested, tortured, and cast into a subterranean dungeon known as the Black Pit. While in prison, through the foul air, filth, and pitch-black darkness, came the first intimations of a divine revelation within him. He later described, "The breezes of the all-glorious were wafted over me, and taught me the knowledge of all that hath been. This thing is not from me, but from one who is almighty and all-knowing. And he bade me lift up my voice between earth and heaven." When finally released and banished to Baghdad, he began to revive the dispirited followers of the Bab. In 1863, he publicly declared that he was the promised one of whom the Bab had spoken. He took the name Bahá'u'lláh, meaning glory of God, and his followers became known as Baha'is. As Baha'u'llah's followers multiplied, Ottoman and Persian authorities sought ways to suppress his influence. After unsuccessful attempts on his life, they mounted campaigns to harass and discredit him. Eventually, he received an invitation to meet with the Grand Vizier of the Ottoman Empire in Istanbul, and thus began the next stage of his exile. He was exiled first to Istanbul, then to Adrianople. Finally, they condemned him to perpetual imprisonment in the ancient city of Akka, located in present-day Israel. Akka was the harshest prison colony in the Ottoman Empire. The foul climate and vermin-infested buildings made life in Akka one of the most severe punishments possible. Arriving in 1868, Bahá'u'lláh was confined in the citadel, along with some 70 followers and family members who had been exiled with him. While in the prison city of Akka, Bahá'u'lláh wrote many of his important works, addressing the kings and rulers of his day, and explaining the laws and principles of his religion. For one who spent most of his life in prison and exile, he revealed a profound global perspective when he wrote,
"It is not for him to pride himself who loveth his own country, but rather for him who loveth the whole world. The earth is but one country, and mankind its citizens.
Impressed by Bahá'u'llah's character, the local authorities eventually relaxed the conditions of his imprisonment, and he moved a short distance north to Baji, where he spent the remaining 12 years of his life. During this time, he made several visits to Mount Carmel, which is in Haifa, Israel. In 1891, from a spot marked by a distinctive circle of cypress trees, he chose a permanent resting place for the Bab on Mount Carmel. Bahá'u'lláh passed away in 1892. His remains were laid to rest in a small building next to his home in Baji. This shrine of Bahá'u'lláh and the shrine of the Bab on Mount Carmel are places of pilgrimage for Baha'is around the world.
Thank you for listening to OWRS.
When Mr. Olinga, the hand of the cause of God, at that time he was not a hand, visited the beloved guardian in Haifa, Shoghi Effendi told him that every seeker should pass through 3 stages. First, the seeker is attracted to the cause. Second, he accepts the cause and is converted to it. Third, he becomes consecrated to that cause. And the 3 stages were summed up by Shoghi Effendi as attraction, conversion, and consecration. I've often thought about this until I read these words of the beloved guardian. He wrote these words about 2 months and a week or so after the passing of Abdul Baha. And Amatul Baha Ruhiya Khanum has quoted these words of the beloved guardian in her priceless pearl. January 1922, he wrote, "The time has come for the friends the world over to think not as to how they should serve the cause, but how the cause should be served." There is a subtle difference here between the 2 positions. I would like to read that passage again. "The time has come for the friends the world over to think not as to how they should serve the cause, with my emphasis, but how the cause should be served." In the first position, the center is the individual. He says, all right, depending upon my circumstances, I'll see what I can do, and so on and so forth. He becomes the center. The cause must turn around him or her. In the second position, the cause of God is the center, and the individual revolves around, circles around the cause of God to see what it needs at any given time. For this condition to be attained, one has to be in love with the cause of God. It is not anymore enough to believe in the cause of God and recognize the manifestation of God. One should love the manifestation of God. Love me that I may love thee. So recognition by itself seems to be not enough, insufficient. It has to be supported by love. Love for the manifestation of God. We should learn how to love Bahá'u'lláh. In one of his passages in the Gleanings, Bahá'u'lláh says, after the recognition of the manifestation of God, the two obligations that follow are steadfastness in his love and obedience to his commands. So you see, it's not only love, but it is steadfastness in one's love for Bahá'u'lláh, because there are many tests that come our way, and we should be able to withstand these tests and overcome them. And as a result of these tests, our love for Bahá'u'lláh should intensify. The flame should burn more fiercely. So he says, steadfastness in one's love. This reminds me of a little story that I have made up. This story, however, is based on one of the statements made by Abdul-Baha in one of his tablets. And it also reminds me of the well-known prayer of Bahá'u'lláh, I know not, O my God, what the fire is which thou didst kindle in thy land. And so the story goes like this. Once upon a time, there was a piece of iron buried somewhere in a valley. And a Baha'i teacher passes by and picks up that piece of metal and tells, we have to, of course, at this point, credit this piece of metal with intelligence and with a soul, with a human soul. And so the teacher tells this piece of metal, you know, I want to tell you about the fire which is raging and blazing in the world of existence. Are you interested? He says, yes. He says, let's get along. I'll show you. They walk, and from a distance, they see some smoke. And he says, you see that smoke? Wherever there is smoke, there is fire. And at that point, some teachers are so much in haste that they produce the declaration card and say, well, since you have accepted that there should be some fire, why don't you sign the declaration card? But it's really too soon at that point. So let's get along with the story. The teacher says, this is not enough. Let us approach the fire. And say they walk a little, and now they hear the crackling of the fuel, or if you like, the branches of the trees. He says, do you hear? He says, yes. This is fire. He says, this is not enough. Let's approach it a little bit more. And he sees the flame. Do you see it? Yes, I do. He says, this is not enough. Let's get just a little bit closer. And he feels the warmth. And he is warm himself after being cold. At that point, if he produces the declaration card, it seems to me it's all right. The story is not finished. I'm continuing the thought of Abdul-Baha. The teacher says, you know, my friend, let us throw ourselves into the fire. And he accepts. And they jump into the fire. And you know what happens to this metal? This metal, which was dark, suddenly becomes luminous. It changes its color. It sheds off the skin of rust which surrounded it. It becomes luminous like the fire. So much so that it is difficult to distinguish where the metal ends and where the flame begins. This, I think, is consecration. It is this transformation which God expects each one of us to reach. and not stop at stage 2, but acquire the qualities of fire, so that this fire will burn within us, so that in everything we do, wherever we go, whatever we say, will be a manifestation of that fire, a reflection of that fire. This, I believe, is consecration. This, I believe, is when we put the cause first and not ourselves first. This is when we have our priorities in the right order.
What steps can a person take to become consecrated if they believe in the cause of God but are not consecrated yet?
As to this question of consecration and how to attain consecration, I tell you that it is impossible for us to attain consecration without the help of God. It is a combination between our personal will, the exercise of our personal will, and the confirmations of God. When the two meet, then there is a transformation that takes place. But you need that help of God. It is like asking God to hold your hand. Oh God, hold thou my hand. But supposing your hand is in your pocket and you say, oh God, help thou, guide me, hold thou my hand. Do you think he's going to hold your hand? I'm not God, but I'm telling you, he's not going to hold it. Because it's in your pocket. But bring out your hand, extend it towards him. Pray him, supplicate him, not only with words, but with deeds. Beg him. He will hold your hand and he will guide you for the rest of your lives. Be sure.
Thank you for tuning in. You can contact us at info@oneworldradiostation.org. Wishing you health and happiness. Bye for now.